The days of a service getting created in one organization and being leveraged in another is over. The service consuming organization's needs, pains, and outcomes can only be known if they are part of the process. That is where co creation of value comes into the picture. For two organizations, two legal entities to work together, there must be trust between them. Unless the service consumer trusts the service provider to do the right thing, the service consumer will not share the intricate details needed to design the service. The service consumer needs to be transparent about the needs, the problems, and the outcomes they wish to achieve. And the service provider must take the service consumer on the journey of service development. During development, there will be bumps and hurdles. Hiding them and under the carpet does not help anybody. They too need to be transparent. It should be like a husband and wife's relationship. If there are secrets in the relationship, it will not last. Someday or the other, it will break and the whole thing will come apart. Likewise, the relationship between a service consumer and a service provider must be built on trust and should be crystalline transparent. ITIL publication states that the service relationship is a cooperation between a service provider and service consumer. It includes service provision, service consumption, and service relationship management. Let me explain the concept of service relationship model with an example. The world of service management is convoluted. A service provider of a service ends up being a service consumer of another service. We have discussed this in an earlier video. This could happen in many-to-many relationships. At any given point in time, all of us as individuals or as organizations act as service providers to other individuals or organizations, or end up being service consumers from other individuals or organizations. Each of the set of gears refers to the cogwheels that make a service happen, either in provision or consumption. Let us consider the example of Netflix service for video streaming. The person who watches TV shows on Netflix is a service consumer in this example and has a service relationship with Netflix, which is a video streaming service provider. While Netflix plays service provider to TV audience, it consumes content delivery network services offered by Akamai. In this relationship, Netflix is a service consumer while Akamai is a service provider. Moving on, Akamai consumes services from Microsoft Azure for its data center needs. So in this relationship, Akamai, which played service provider to Netflix, is putting on the hat of a service consumer and Microsoft Azure as a service provider. It is also possible that the person who watches Netflix, the person who consumes Netflix service, is a DevOps consultant who is hired by Microsoft to conduct a transformation feasibility check. If this is the case, then Microsoft Azure becomes a service consumer and the consultant who also is a Netflix audience becomes a service provider. While we talk about service provision and service consumption, it is important to understand the responsibilities of each of the roles. A service provider is expected to, number one, manage all the resources that are used in the delivery of service to service consumer. Resources could be infrastructure, networks, people, processes, data, etc. Management of resources could range from procurement, maintenance, installation, decommissioning, among others. To generalize, it's the entire life cycle of resource management. Number two, provide accesses to service consumer organization, which will be certain end users. The type of access to be provided will be mutually agreed with the service consumer organization. Number three, ensure that the service meets all the parameters laid out in the SLA document between the service provider and the service consumer organizations. This will be especially true for aspects of the service involving direct outcomes for the service consumer organization. Number four, ensure that the service is continuously improved and the service does not lay dormant. This is extremely critical because any service that lays static will not last. Number 5, no service is without fault lines. There will be incidents and service requests raised by the service consumer organization. Based on the agreed service window and the SLA for resolution, the service provider is expected to ensure that the service actions are met on a timely basis. Finally, if goods are involved, physical delivery of goods are an added responsibility for the service provider. Now let's look at the service consumer's responsibilities. While the service provider is responsible for managing their resources, a service consumer on their end is expected to manage their resources. They too will have their business processes, infrastructure, networks, among others. For instance, Netflix offers millions of video content choices, and the user from his end needs to ensure that at a minimum that a working internet connection is available and a smart TV is available, or maybe a cell phone is available or a computer is available to enjoy the service. When the service does not work as expected, or if something else is needed, then the service consumer must reach out to the service provider in the form of service actions, be it incidents or service requests, to get them registered and actioned. If goods are involved, receiving the goods is an added responsibility for the service consumer.